the jobless man who became an F-rank hero, but summoned an SS-rank beast with cooking. This story follows Makoto, an unemployed man who was reincarnated as the weakest F-ranked hero. But despite his low rank, his legendary cooking skills and a unique cheat ability, allowing him to use Amazon, soon change his fate. Our tale begins deep in a forest, where a venom tarantula is preparing to ambush a rabbit. Just as it leaps, the mighty wolf beast Fell lightly taps his paw on the ground, releasing thunderous shockwaves that obliterate the spider and the others hiding nearby. Fell didn't bother with such weak prey for fun. He simply wanted to try an odd idea, cooking spider meat for Makoto's next meal. Makoto is hesitant, but Fell insists that once the shells are removed, spider meat can be quite edible. Suddenly, Sui pops out of Makoto's bag, eager to fight since she hasn't battled any monsters in a while. Makoto smiles and promises she'll get her turn next time. Watching Makoto being so gentle with Sui makes Fell jealous, complaining that Makoto never listens to him. But that's not true. Makoto has always done whatever Fell asked, ever since they met. As expected, Fell soon orders his useless chef to prepare lunch, claiming he's tired from running all day while carrying Makoto and Sui. Makoto knows that's just an excuse, but he's used to it, so he simply gets to work. First, he stores the spider corpses inside his dimensional storage. Then he brings out 3 kinds of meat, ribeye on the left, sirloin in the middle, and ground orc general meat on the right. That's when a problem hits him. He's running low on ingredients for a proper meal. After thinking for a bit, he decides to make gyoza. Opening his online grocery store, he scrolls through the list to buy gyoza wrappers and seasonings. While browsing, Fell's eyes gleam when he spots Wagyu beef, but Makoto refuses to buy it since it's unnecessary for the dish. Ignoring Fell's pleas, he orders only what he needs, chicken stock and sesame oil, since he already has the rest. Makoto begins finely chopping cabbage and chives, adding ginger and garlic paste to the ground meat. Then he seasons it with soy sauce, sake, chicken broth powder, sesame oil, salt and pepper before mixing everything together. Finally, he folds in the vegetables and starts wrapping the gyoza. Sui joins in, but her first few attempts fail, because she overfills the wrappers. After Makoto gently corrects her, she quickly becomes just as skilled as he is. Once the gyoza are ready, Makoto pan-fries them until golden brown, adds flour water, covers the pan, and lets it steam. When the water evaporates, he drizzles sesame oil around the pan and serves the perfectly crisped gyoza on a plate. Fell and Sui can't resist. They dig in immediately, showering the dish with praise and asking for seconds. Makoto smiles and happily makes another batch, saving a few pieces for himself. But just as he's about to take a bite, a small dragon suddenly lands on his face. Fell instantly recognizes it as a pixie dragon, an extremely rare creature. Despite its size, it's not a child, but a full-grown dragon species with powerful magic. Attracted by the smell of food, the little dragon devours a gyoza in delight and begs for more. Amused, Makoto gives it the rest of his meal, commenting on how cute it is. Fell warns him not to be fooled. Pixie dragons can be vicious and unpredictable. However, before Makoto can react, the tiny dragon leaps at him again and, in a flash of light, forms a magical contract. Just like that, the weakest F-ranked hero accidentally gains another powerful familiar. Now that the contract is complete, Makoto can understand the pixie dragon's language. Curious, he asks why the dragon suddenly decided to form a contract. The little dragon simply replies that he did it so he could eat delicious food every day. Sui happily welcomes the new member to their group, and the dragon quickly gets along with both the slime and the Fenrir wolf. Meanwhile, their master can only sigh, wondering if he'll ever have a say when surrounded by these powerful mythical creatures. Before long, the dragon asks Makoto to give him a name. Proudly calling himself a great name giver, Makoto names him Dorichin. It's a rather cringy name, but before Dora can even complain, the system instantly registers it. Makoto checks Dora's stats and is shocked to discover that the little dragon is over 100 years old. Dora feels humiliated by his childish name, but Fell reassures him, saying, "Don't worry. This fool once tried to name me Pochi or Koro." Suie chimes in, saying she never had a problem with the name Makoto gave her and tells Dora he'll get used to it soon enough. Makoto smiles, glad to see all 3 of his familiars getting along. Later, he travels to Cray City with his companions to officially register Dora as his 3rd familiar at the Adventurers Guild. There, the receptionist informs him that the guildmaster has a special request. The guildmaster, a dwarf named Rulfo, explains that monsters in the nearby forest have recently become aggressive, making it dangerous for locals to collect materials. Since many businesses rely on those resources, Rulfo wants Makoto to investigate the cause. Though it's clearly not his area of expertise, Dora confidently claims that the monsters in that forest are weak, mostly spiders. Hearing this, Makoto realizes that Rulfo is referring to the same forest where Fell had exterminated the venomous tarantulas earlier. To confirm, Makoto shows Rulfo the spider corpses stored in his dimensional inventory. When Rulfo learns that these tarantulas' silk is a valuable material used in clothing production, Makoto apologizes for unknowingly killing them. But Rulfo isn't upset. In fact, he's impressed that Makoto managed to handle such dangerous creatures alone. He points out that their shells and webs could still sell for a fortune. He even adds that, when boiled in salt water, their meat tastes surprisingly delicious. Makoto doubts him, but after constant nagging from his three familiars, he gives in. He offers to sell Rulfo the shells and webbing in exchange for processing the meat, and the dwarf eagerly agrees. While Rulfo works on the meat, Makoto and his familiars explore the city marketplace. Having worn the same stinky shirt all season, Makoto decides it's time for a wardrobe upgrade. He goes on a small shopping spree, buying several outfits he'll probably never wear. When they return to the guild, Rulfo proudly presents the processed spider meat. To Makoto's surprise, it looks exactly like crab meat. Hesitant at first, he takes a bite, and is stunned by its rich umami flavor. Excited, Makoto gets to work preparing a proper meal. He makes crab salad, crab fried rice, crab spring rolls, and crab omelets, all to celebrate Dora officially joining the party. They dig in, but as Makoto starts craving grilled crab, he decides to cook one more dish. The spider legs initially look unsettling, but once boiled, they turn a beautiful reddish hue. He grills the meat in its own juices and is just about to take the first bite when Fel interrupts, scolding him for trying to eat alone. Dora and Sui protest too, forcing Makoto to hand over the dish to his three gluttonous familiars. While eating, Dora confesses he's glad he decided to follow Makoto. Surprised, Makoto asks what he means. Dora explains that back in Carolina City, he saw Makoto cooking a mouth-watering dish and followed him out of curiosity. He arrived at the forest before Makoto did and unintentionally angered all the monsters there. Fel finally realizes that the forest's aggression wasn't due to some strange phenomenon. It was because of Dora's presence. In other words, the spiders were only acting out of fear of the invading pixie dragon. Feeling bad, Makoto remarks that the least they can do is eat the spiders with respect. Later that night, the F-ranked adventurer takes a relaxing bath with Sui while Fel and Dora fall asleep with their bellies full. Afterward, Makoto lies in bed, thinking about what he should do tomorrow. He drifts off to sleep, completely forgetting that he was supposed to offer food to the four goddesses that day. Thankfully, the goddesses don't wake him. Instead, they let their favorite cook enjoy a peaceful night's rest. The next morning, Makoto visits the guild to deliver the spider shells and some extra meat to Rulfo as a gift. The dwarf gratefully accepts, but before leaving, Makoto pulls something out of his storage. The corpse of an earth dragon. Rulfo freezes in shock. Processing such a creature would be an immense task, and selling it, he says, would fetch enough money to buy an entire kingdom. Rulfo tells Makoto that he knows someone capable of processing the earth dragon. After some travel, the group finally reaches the outskirts of Dungeon City. Fel's eyes gleam with anticipation. He hopes there's something in the city worth conquering, some opponent strong enough to entertain him. Sui eagerly pops out of Makoto's bag, expressing her desire to fight inside a dungeon. However, their overly cautious master immediately shuts the idea down. Makoto has no interest in fighting monsters. He'd much rather focus on cooking. Even Dorichin agrees with him, saying they should concentrate on their real purpose, visiting the guildmaster to get the earth dragon processed. But the moment Fel hears the words, earth dragon meat, his priorities instantly shift. They arrive at the massive front gate of Dolan in no time. There's a long line of travelers waiting to enter, but Makoto, being the main character, clearly doesn't want to wait hours in line. Fel, ever the impulsive one, suggests leaping over the walls to skip the process entirely. Makoto immediately refuses. We'd probably get thrown in prison for life if we tried something that stupid, he says flatly. Resigned, the group joins the line. But soon, everyone around them starts trembling once they notice the godlike Fenrir standing calmly behind them. The crowd's panic attracts the city guards, who rush over to investigate. The guards freeze when they see Fel up close, clearly realizing that anyone capable of controlling such a creature must be someone important. One of them nervously asks Makoto what his business is in Dolan. Flustered, Makoto explains that he's here to meet the guildmaster and assures them he means no harm. He shows his adventurer's guild card as proof. Before the guards can respond, a tall, blonde elf approaches and speaks up. It's fine. He's my guest. The elf introduces himself as Eleland, the guildmaster of Dolan City. He had already heard about Makoto from Rulfo and had been expecting his visit. But as he steps closer to greet him, Eleland suddenly freezes. His eyes lock onto the tiny pixie dragon perched on Makoto's shoulder, and for a moment, he's completely speechless. Before explaining his reaction, Eleland politely escorts Makoto and his familiars to his office. Once there, he offers Dora special treatment, setting up an elegant perch crafted from mana-infused wood. To everyone's surprise, Dora completely ignores it and sits on the floor like it's no big deal. He's determined to record every detail about the rare dragon's behavior, in hopes of befriending another one someday. He then serves Makoto a cup of tea and offers Dora-chan some flower nectar infused with mana, the pixie dragon's supposed favorite drink. Eleland stares intensely, waiting to see what Dora will do. Dora, realizing he's being treated like an experiment, turns his head away in annoyance. The guildmaster, of course, writes that down in his notes too. Aleland recalls that ancient records in the royal library state that pixie dragons feed only on mana and flower nectar. Seeing Dora reject it makes him question whether those texts were wrong all along. Then he remembers the real reason for their visit, the earth dragon. His excitement returns as he leads the group toward the guild's warehouse to inspect the creature. Just as they're about to leave, a bald man stops him, reminding Aleland that he has a scheduled meeting with the Merchants Guild that afternoon. Aleland tries to cancel, but the man refuses to allow it. Fortunately, there's still some time before the meeting, so they proceed to the warehouse. Once there, Makoto casually pulls the massive earth dragon corpse from his item box. The sight of the towering beast sends chills down Aleland's spine. After taking a moment to regain his composure, he begins documenting every physical detail of the dragon, muttering observations to himself as he writes. He then returns to the topic that's been bugging him. So, what exactly does the pixie dragon eat? Makoto explains that Dora eats normal food like the rest of them. Still, he turns to Dora and asks if his species has any special dietary habits. Their telepathic exchange completely baffles Aleland, who doesn't realize that Makoto can communicate mentally with his familiars. Just as he's about to bombard them with more questions, the bald assistant stops him and apologizes to Makoto for his superior's overzealous curiosity. Putting research aside, Aleland finally gets to work. Unfortunately, he informs Makoto that processing the earth dragon will take at least a full day. With nothing else to do in the meantime, Makoto and his companions start wondering how to spend their free time. Then, as if struck by sudden inspiration, Makoto smiles and says, "I think I just came up with a perfect way to pass the time." To pass the time, Makoto decides to cook something delicious. He quickly orders ingredients from the online grocery store and starts preparing the meal using a special pot called the Genghis Khan. Makoto arranges vegetables along the edges of the pot and places the meat in the center. After pouring in the sauce and cooking everything for about 10 minutes, the dish, otherworldly lamb and mutton Genghis Khan, is ready to serve. Fel, who normally hates vegetables, only wants to eat the meat at first. But after some insistence from Makoto, he reluctantly takes a bite of the veggies and instantly falls in love with the taste. Dora and Sui also devour their portions and eagerly beg Makoto to make another serving since they can't get enough of it. After an intense hour of non-stop cooking, Makoto finally brings out a box of crackers for dessert. Once again, all three familiars gush that the sweetness makes their mouths feel like they're melting. Makoto is happy they enjoyed it, though deep down he didn't really want to share his crackers. That night turns out to be long and exhausting as none of his familiars can sleep. They're all hyped up like kids on a sugar rush, leaving Makoto frustrated. The next morning he heads to the guild, hoping that Eland has finished processing the earth dragon so they can finally eat. Inside the dungeon, he meets Ugor and excitedly asks whether Eland is done. Before Ugor can answer, Eland himself appears, looking thrilled. Makoto assumes his excitement means the dragon has been processed, but Eland instead reveals that he spent the entire day and night measuring, analyzing, and studying the earth dragon's body. Despite the exhaustion, he describes it as the most rewarding experience of his life. While Makoto appreciates Eland's dedication, he also realizes this means the dragon still hasn't been processed. Eland admits as much and takes them inside to handle it together. He explains that the dragon's hide is incredibly tough, so tough that only their strongest knife might have a chance. Confidently, he raises the blade and strikes, only for the knife to snap in two. Eland is devastated, not only because his efforts were wasted, but also because that was their best weapon. With no blade strong enough to pierce the dragon's body, Fel quickly concludes that it's impossible to feast on the dragon after all, and unfortunately, he's absolutely right. Their trip turns out to be a total bust. Fel faints dramatically, begging that they at least find something to make this trip worth it. Makoto, equally frustrated, turns to Ugor and asks what they can possibly do now. Ugor sighs and says there's really only one option left. They'll need to venture into the dungeon to mine mithril ore, which they can then use to forge a new, stronger knife. Hearing that, Fel, Sui, and Dora immediately perk up. At least this means they might still get to eat. They eagerly suggest going into the dungeon on their own, but Makoto quickly shuts that idea down, reminding them that it's far too dangerous. He tells them to calm down and wait until Eland recovers before doing anything reckless. Even though his familiars are clearly bitter about the situation, Makoto leads them outside and gives them a stern but caring talk. He explains that if they rush into the dungeon and cause trouble, they'll become targets, and if that happens, their journey together could come to an end. No more traveling means no more tasty meals. That logic finally gets through to them, and they decide to stay put and cool off. To lift their spirits, Makoto offers to cook something for them. He quickly gathers ingredients and prepares an easy dish, orc pork kimchi with rice. As soon as he serves it, his familiars dive in excitedly, their earlier frustration melting away with each bite. Makoto lets out a sigh of relief in the midst of the chaos, trying to think about what to do next. Meanwhile, up in the divine realm, the gods are furious, Mukoda hasn't sent them their usual offerings. The clique of deities who secretly know about his arrival in this world try to keep quiet, but their loud complaints attract the attention of two other gods. These newcomers, Vahagan, the god of war, and Hesus, the god of blacksmithing, confront the group and accuse them of blackmailing a human for royalties. The gods defend themselves, insisting that it's not blackmail, just appreciation for their divine services. Sensing that something is off, Mukoda kneels and prays to them, apologizing for forgetting to send their offerings. He begs them not to fight over it. The two new gods respond kindly, introducing themselves and saying they've heard a lot about him. When Hesus hears Mukoda mention blacksmithing, he immediately knows what's on his mind: the broken knife. Before Mukoda can even finish his request, Hesus tells him he'll grant him a blessing that will allow him to create a blade far superior to the previous one. However, there's a catch. The gods want something in return. Since they've heard that Mukoda can bring items from his world, they demand booze as payment. Mukoda agrees without hesitation. Hesus looks over the familiars and decides that Sui will be the best vessel for his blessing. He blesses her with divine blacksmithing power. Vahagan, not wanting to be left out, insists on granting his own blessing too. Mukoda tries to refuse, saying he doesn't need any power for war, but Vahagan argues that his blessing would be perfect for Fel and Dora, especially if they plan to visit dungeons. He blesses them both, enhancing their combat strength. As thanks, Mukoda sends the gods a generous supply of booze from Earth. The gods, satisfied, warn him never to delay their offerings again before celebrating wildly in the heavens. Later, Mukoda checks Sui's stats and is shocked to see that she now has the blacksmithing skill. However, he realizes they still need mithril ore to make a new knife. That's when Fel reminds him that they actually defeated a mithril lizard earlier, meaning they already have some ore. Remembering this, Mukoda pulls out the ore and hands it to Suye. Using her newly granted power, she forges a knife far stronger than the one that broke. Mukoda can't help but wonder why Fel was so insistent on going into the dungeon when they already had what they needed. He tells everyone they won't be going after all, much to Fel's disappointment. Now that the knife issue is solved, Mukoda checks Fel and Dora's stats as well and nearly falls over. They've both gained battle reinforcement, boosting their strength by 50%. Mukoda feels uneasy, realizing his already overpowered familiars have become even more terrifying. The two beasts proudly show off their new abilities while Mukoda can only look on in horror, wondering what kind of chaos they'll cause next.